Millionaire panics when his baby cries non-stop on the plane, until a poor 5-year-old girl does the unthinkable, leaving everyone shocked. Before we unfold this journey, press like and share where you're from and your favorite life lesson. The piercing screams echoed through the first-class cabin of Flight 847, making every passenger wince and shift uncomfortably in their leather seats. Alexander Thornfield III gripped his crystal whiskey glass so tightly his knuckles turned white, watching his 6-month-old son William writhe in agony despite every luxury money could buy. "Do something, Catherine," Alexander hissed at his wife, who sat rigid in her Chanel suit, her perfectly manicured hands trembling as she tried everything: expensive formula, designer pacifiers, premium baby toys that cost more than most people's monthly salary. The baby's cries grew more desperate, more haunting. Other first-class passengers shot dirty looks their way, whispering behind their hands. Alexander felt his reputation crumbling with each shriek. He was Alexander Thornfield III, CEO of Thornfield Industries, worth $3 billion. Yet he was powerless against his own child's mysterious suffering. "Sir, perhaps we should consider moving to—" The flight attendant began diplomatically. "Absolutely not," Catherine snapped, her emerald earrings catching the cabin light. "We paid for first class. We're staying in first class." The crying intensified, and Alexander noticed something that made his blood run cold. William's lips were turning blue, his tiny body convulsing in ways that seemed far beyond normal infant distress. This wasn't just crying. This was something terrifyingly wrong. Dr. Morrison, their family physician, had warned them about William's rare condition, Thornfield-Kinsey syndrome, a mysterious genetic disorder affecting only 1 in 10 million children. The condition caused severe respiratory distress, developmental delays, and progressive muscle weakness. But seeing it manifest at 30,000 feet, surrounded by strangers and trapped in a metal tube, Alexander felt more helpless than ever before. "The oxygen masks," he gasped, reaching overhead. "Maybe if—" "That's not going to help," came a small voice from behind them. Alexander spun around to see a little girl, maybe 5 years old, standing in the aisle. Her clothes were clearly hand-me-downs, a faded pink dress with tiny yellow flowers that had seen better days, scuffed white shoes with mismatched laces, and tangled blonde hair that hadn't seen a professional stylist. She was holding something small and golden in her tiny palm, her bright blue eyes fixed intently on baby William. "Excuse me?" Catherine's voice dripped with disdain. "Little girl, where are your parents? You shouldn't be wandering around unattended. This is first class." But the child's gaze never wavered from the suffering infant. There was something ancient, almost otherworldly in those eyes, as if this 5-year-old had seen more of life's mysteries than most adults ever would. "Your baby is very sick," she said matter-of-factly, taking another step closer. "But I know what's wrong with him." Alexander found himself leaning forward despite his usual prejudices against people from economy class. "What do you mean, you know what's wrong? Do your parents work in medicine?" The little girl shook her head solemnly, her tangled blonde curls catching the overhead light. "No, sir, but I can see things, feel things. Grandmama says it's a gift from God." She opened her small palm, revealing what looked like a tiny crystal vial filled with liquid that seemed to glow like molten gold. "This will make your baby better, I promise." Catherine recoiled as if the child were offering poison. "Alexander, don't you dare let some random child from Coach near our baby." "Where's security? Someone get security." She grabbed the call button frantically. "This is completely inappropriate." But baby William's convulsions were getting worse by the second. His breathing became shallow and ragged, his little chest barely rising and falling. Alexander had seen this before, 3 times in the past month, and each episode seemed more severe than the last. Dr. Morrison's words echoed in his mind like a death sentence. "The condition is degenerative, Mr. Thornfield. Without a breakthrough treatment, which frankly doesn't exist yet, William might not see his first birthday. I'm sorry. Dun, the little girl's eyes filled with tears as she watched the baby suffer, her small face contorting with empathy that seemed far beyond her years. Please, mister, she whispered urgently, just 3 drops. 3 tiny drops under his tongue. That's all he needs. I've seen this before. You've seen this before? Alexander's voice cracked with desperation. Where? When? My cousin Bobby had the same sickness when he was a baby. His mama thought he was going to die, but grandmama gave him the golden medicine, and now he's 8 years old and plays baseball and everything. Emma's words tumbled out rapidly, her small hands gesturing as she spoke. Grandmama knows about babies who are born special, babies who need extra help to live. Absolutely not! Catherine stood up abruptly, her $5,000 Hermes handbag clutched like a weapon. Alexander, I absolutely forbid this nonsense. Some filthy child from economy with some backwoods concoction? Our son needs real medicine from real doctors, not whatever folk remedy this little vagrant is peddling. The word vagrant hung in the air like a slap. The little girl's face flushed red, but instead of backing down, she straightened her small shoulders with remarkable dignity. I'm not a vagrant, ma'am, she said quietly, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill over. My name is Emma May Johnson. My daddy was Sergeant First Class Michael Johnson. He died protecting our country in Afghanistan when I was 3 years old. My mama works 3 jobs to take care of me, and we're flying home to see my grandmama Clara before she goes to heaven. The raw honesty of it hit Alexander like a physical blow. This wasn't some random child. This was a little girl who had already faced profound loss, yet was focused entirely on helping a stranger's baby. Alexander looked at his son, whose lips were turning an alarming shade of blue, then back at Emma's determined face. Your grandmother made this medicine? Emma nodded solemnly. Grandmama learned about healing from her grandmama, who learned from her grandmama before that. They helped babies who were born different, babies who needed special care to survive. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Your baby wasn't born sick, sir. He was born with a gift. Sometimes gifts are so powerful that they make the body struggle to contain them. A gift? Alexander's voice was barely a whisper. He had never been a superstitious man. His world was built on facts, figures, and scientific certainty. But watching his son's life slip away before his eyes, conventional wisdom felt utterly useless. Emma nodded earnestly. Yes, sir, some babies are chosen to do important things when they grow up, but the choosing makes them sick at first. The golden medicine helps their little bodies get strong enough to handle their special purpose. Catherine made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Alexander, listen to yourself. You're seriously considering medical advice from a 5-year-old who believes in fairy tales? But Alexander was no longer listening to his wife. Baby William's breathing had become alarmingly shallow, and a greyish tinge was spreading from his lips down his neck. The flight attendants were rushing around frantically, calling for any medical professionals on board, but Alexander knew, with a bone-deep certainty that terrified him, that conventional medicine had already failed his son. Dr. Sarah Chen, an emergency physician, pushed through the crowd that had gathered. I'm a doctor. Let me examine him, she said, kneeling beside William's carrier. After a quick assessment, her expression grew grave. His oxygen saturation is dangerously low. We need to make an emergency landing immediately. That won't help, Emma said softly, but with absolute conviction. By the time we land, it'll be too late, but 3 drops of this, she held up the golden vial, and he'll be breathing fine before we even start descending. Dr. Chen looked at the child skeptically. Little girl, I understand you want to help, but this baby needs immediate medical intervention, not... She stopped mid-sentence as she got a closer look at the vial. What exactly is in that? Emma's face scrunched up in concentration. Grandmama calls it liquid sunshine. She makes it from special honey that comes from bees who only eat flowers that grow in blessed ground, mixed with water from a spring that never runs dry, and some other secret things she learned from her grandmama. Blessed ground. Dr. Chen raised an eyebrow. The cemetery where my great-great-grandmama is buried. The flowers there are different. They glow a little bit at night, and they never die, even in winter. Catherine grabbed Alexander's arm desperately. You cannot be seriously considering this superstitious nonsense. Our son needs science, not some cemetery flower potion. But Alexander found himself studying Emma's face, the complete lack of doubt, the unwavering confidence, the almost luminous certainty in her bright blue eyes. There was something about this child that defied explanation, something that made him want to believe in miracles. Emma, he said carefully, if this doesn't work— It will work, Emma interrupted, with the quiet authority of someone far older than 5. But you have to believe too, Mr. Thornfield. You have to stop being scared and start trusting. The medicine only works when it meets true love and real faith. Alexander took the tiny vial with hands that trembled only slightly. As he held it up to the light, the golden liquid seemed to pulse with its own inner radiance, warm to the touch despite the chilled cabin air. Baby William let out a particularly agonized cry, and Alexander made his decision. The golden liquid seemed to shimmer with ethereal light as Alexander carefully tilted the tiny vial toward his son's blue-tinged lips. The entire first-class cabin had fallen into hushed silence, passengers craning their necks to witness whatever was about to unfold. Even the flight attendants had stopped their frantic preparations to watch. Catherine made one final desperate attempt to stop him, grabbing his wrist. Alexander, please, think rationally. We don't know anything about this child, about her family, about what's actually in that potion. What if it's toxic? What if she's some kind of confidence artist? What if this is all an elaborate scheme? What if she's an angel sent to save our son? Alexander whispered, surprised by the words coming from his own mouth. He had never been a religious man, raised in boarding schools and Ivy League universities where faith was considered intellectual weakness, but something about Emma's presence felt divinely orchestrated. Doctor. Jen positioned herself with her stethoscope ready. If we're doing this, I need to monitor his vitals constantly. At the first sign of adverse reaction— There won't be any adverse reaction, Emma said with serene confidence. The medicine knows the difference between sickness and health. It only attacks what doesn't belong. Alexander looked one last time at his dying son, then at the extraordinary little girl who had somehow appeared at their darkest moment. Emma May Johnson, he said solemnly, I'm trusting you with the most precious thing in my world. Emma nodded gravely. I won't let you down, Mr. Thornfield, and neither will baby William. He's going to do amazing things when he grows up. The first drop touched William's tongue. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Catherine held her breath, her face a mask of terror and fury. Emma stood perfectly still, her small hands clasped in prayer. Dr. Chen's eyes never left her instruments. Then, as if responding to some cosmic signal, baby William's violent convulsions simply stopped. The second drop followed, sliding past lips that were already beginning to regain their natural pink color. By the third drop, William's breathing had transformed from desperate gasps to the deep, regular rhythm of peaceful sleep. His tiny eyes fluttered open, not with the wild panic of pain, but with the bright, curious gaze of a perfectly healthy infant. The silence in the cabin was absolutely thunderous. Passengers stared in open-mouthed amazement as baby William, who had been literally dying just moments before, began to coo and reach for his father's face with steady little hands. Dr. Chen's stethoscope nearly fell from her hands as she listened to William's chest. This is medically impossible, she breathed. His heart rate is perfect. His breathing is completely normal. His muscle tone, reflexes, skin color, everything indicates a completely healthy baby. She looked up at Alexander with bewilderment. "Mr. Thornfield, I've been practicing emergency medicine for 15 years. I've never seen anything like this. His condition appears to be completely reversed." Alexander cradled his son, feeling the strong, steady heartbeat against his chest. Tears, he didn't know he was capable of shedding, began streaming down his face. "Emma," he whispered, "how did you know? How could you possibly have known?" Emma smiled with the wisdom of ages contained in her 5-year-old face. "Grandmama always says the golden medicine finds the people who need it most. She says it doesn't just heal bodies, it heals families and hearts and futures too." But even as Alexander experienced the greatest joy of his life, Emma's expression grew troubled, her eyes scanning the crowd of amazed passengers who were now pulling out phones and cameras, documenting the miracle they had just witnessed. "Mr. Thornfield," she said urgently, tugging on his sleeve, "we need to talk about what happens next." Alexander looked down at Emma's suddenly serious face, still overwhelmed by the miracle he was holding in his arms. "What do you mean, what happens next?" Emma glanced nervously around the cabin at all the passengers recording videos and taking photos. "This isn't going to stay secret," she said quietly. "By the time we land, everyone's going to know about the golden medicine, and when they know about the medicine, they'll want to know about you," Alexander finished, understanding flooding through him. A tired-looking woman in a faded fast food uniform made her way through the crowd of excited passengers. Her face was lined with exhaustion and worry, but her eyes held the same otherworldly depth as Emma's. She gently placed protective hands on her daughter's shoulders. "Emma May, you know you're not supposed to use the medicine without asking Mama first," the woman said softly, but her voice carried no anger, only concerned love. Alexander stood immediately, still cradling his now healthy son. "Ma'am, I'm Alexander Thornfield. I cannot begin to express my gratitude for what your daughter just did. She saved William's life." The woman's eyes widened as she took in Alexander's expensive suit, his obvious wealth and status. "I'm Mary Johnson, sir. And I'm afraid saving your baby's life might have put Emma in terrible danger." Catherine, who had been sitting in stunned silence, finally found her voice. "Danger? What kind of danger?" Mary's face grew pale as she looked around at all the phones recording their conversation. "Mr. Thornfield, for 3 nights running, I've had the same dream. A vision, really. It always starts the same way, with Emma giving the golden medicine to a baby on an airplane." Alexander felt ice form in his veins. "You dreamed about this? About what just happened?" Mary nodded reluctantly. "In the dream, after Emma heals the baby, word spreads, videos go viral, news reporters start calling. And then," she swallowed hard, "then the bad men come." "What bad men?" Alexander demanded. Before Mary could answer, a man in an expensive navy suit appeared beside their seats, seeming to materialize from nowhere. His predatory smile was perfectly practiced, his eyes calculating as they moved from baby William to Emma and back again. "Mr. Thornfield." "Jonathan Vance, Pharmaceutical Acquisitions for Meridian Industries," the man said smoothly, extending a manicured hand. "I couldn't help but witness what just transpired. Quite extraordinary. I'd love to discuss some business opportunities regarding your son's remarkable recovery." Alexander didn't take the offered handshake, instinctively moving to shield Emma and Mary. "There's nothing to discuss." Vance's smile never wavered, but his eyes sharpened like a hawk spotting prey. "Oh, I think there's quite a bit to discuss. Revolutionary medical breakthroughs rarely remain family secrets for long, especially in the age of social media. Within hours, this footage will be seen by millions of people around the world." He gestured casually at the dozens of phones still recording. Sick children's parents, desperate families, pharmaceutical companies, government health agencies, they'll all want to know about this miraculous cure. And more importantly, they'll want to know about the remarkable young lady who provided it. Emma pressed closer to her mother, and Mary's protective arm tightened around her daughter. Alexander could see the fear in both their faces, the deep, primal fear of people who had lived their entire lives at the mercy of those more powerful than themselves. "You need to walk away," Alexander said quietly, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Right now." Nah, Vance chuckled, pulling out his phone to show them a screen that made Alexander's blood run cold. Social media feeds were already exploding with videos of the healing, hashtags like Miracle Child and Golden Cure trending worldwide. "Mr. Thornfield, with all due respect, you're thinking far too small," Vance continued. "What if I told you that little girl could make you not just wealthy, but historically significant? The man who brought miraculous healing to humanity. Think of the children who could be saved, the diseases that could be cured." Emma tugged urgently on Alexander's sleeve. "Mr. Thornfield, he's one of the bad men from Mama's dream. We need to get away from him, now." Alexander's protective instincts flared as he took in Vance's predatory expression and Emma's obvious fear. But before he could respond, his wife Catherine suddenly stood up, her eyes gleaming with an ambition that made his stomach turn. "Alexander, Mr. Vance is right," she said excitedly. "If Emma really can do this, if there's more of that medicine, think about what this could mean for our family's legacy. We could be remembered as the people who revolutionized medicine." "Catherine," Alexander said sharply, "we're talking about a 5-year-old child. We're talking about the discovery of the century." Catherine's voice rose with manic enthusiasm. "Do you realize what kind of pharmaceutical patents we could secure? What kind of research opportunities? The licensing deals alone could be worth billions." Alexander stared at his wife in disgust. Even now, even after witnessing a miracle that had saved their son's life, she was calculating profit margins and market opportunities. Emma's small hand slipped into Alexander's. "Mr. Thornfield," she whispered urgently, "in Mama's dream, the bad man has friends waiting at the airport, government people in black suits. They want to take me away from Mama and put me in a laboratory somewhere." Mary Johnson's face had gone ashen. "Emma, honey, you weren't supposed to tell him that part." "What laboratory?" Alexander demanded, kneeling down to Emma's eye level. "Emma, what exactly did your mother see in these dreams?" Emma's bright blue eyes filled with tears. "They want to study me like I'm a science experiment. They want to figure out how the medicine works by doing tests on me, scary tests that hurt. And they want to make Mama sign papers that say they can keep me forever." Vance's smile had turned genuinely sinister now. "Mr. Thornfield, surely you understand that scientific advancement sometimes requires sacrifice. This child possesses abilities that could save millions of lives. Don't you think she has a moral obligation to share that gift with the world?" "She's 5 years old," Alexander said coldly, standing to his full height. "She doesn't have obligations to anyone except her mother." "Actually," Vance pulled out an official-looking document, "I think you'll find that's not entirely accurate. You see, I've already been in contact with certain government agencies who have a vested interest in unusual medical phenomena. Child Protective Services tends to be very concerned when children are involved in unregulated medical practices." Mary gasped, pulling Emma closer. "You can't take my baby away from me. I haven't done anything wrong." "Haven't you?" Vance's voice turned silky with threat. "Allowing a minor child to administer unknown substances to an infant? That could be considered child endangerment, couldn't it? Medical malpractice without a license. There are so many potential charges." Alexander felt rage building in his chest, a protective fury unlike anything he'd ever experienced. This corporate vulture was threatening to destroy the family that had just saved his son's life. But Emma surprised them all by stepping forward, away from her mother's protective embrace. Despite her obvious fear, her small chin was raised with remarkable courage. "Mr. Badman," she said clearly, her young voice carrying throughout the cabin, "you can try to hurt my mama and take me away, but you don't understand what you're messing with." Vance raised an eyebrow mockingly. "Oh, and what's that, little girl?" Emma's eyes seemed to glow with an inner light that made several passengers step back involuntarily. "The golden medicine doesn't just heal, mister. It protects, and it remembers who tries to hurt the people it's chosen to help." As if on cue, baby William let out a strong, healthy cry, but it wasn't the sound of distress. It was almost like a battle cry, as if he were adding his voice to Emma's warning. Alexander looked down at his son, then at the extraordinary little girl who had saved him, then at the predator threatening to tear apart their lives. In that moment, Alexander Thornfield III made the most important decision of his privileged existence. "Mary," he said firmly, "gather your things. You and Emma are coming with us." "Alexander!" Catherine protested. "What are you doing?" "I'm choosing the right side," Alexander replied, surprised by how certain he felt. "And Mr. Vance? If you or anyone else tries to hurt this family, you'll discover exactly how much power $3 billion can buy when it's used to protect instead of exploit." But as Flight 847 began its descent toward what was supposed to be a routine landing, Alexander realized that money and influence might not be enough to protect Emma from the forces that were already mobilizing against her. The miracle that had saved his son had just put a 5-year-old girl in the crosshairs of people who would stop at nothing to possess her gift. The real battle was just beginning. 07. The private jet's engines hummed quietly as they flew through the dawn sky, but Alexander could feel the tension crackling through the luxurious cabin. Emma sat curled up next to her mother Mary, both of them looking overwhelmed by the opulent surroundings, leather seats that cost more than Mary's annual salary, crystal decanters filled with expensive liquors, and entertainment systems with screens larger than their apartment television. "Mr. Thornfield," Mary said quietly, her calloused hands nervously smoothing her faded uniform, "I can't let you do this. Getting involved with us will only bring you trouble. People like us. We're not meant for this world." Alexander adjusted baby William in his arms, still marveling at his son's perfect health, the steady breathing, the bright alertness in his eyes, the strong grip of his tiny fingers. "Mrs. Johnson, your daughter saved my child's life. The least I can do is keep her safe from people who want to exploit her gift." Catherine sat rigidly in the corner, having barely spoken since they'd escaped the commercial flight through a back exit at the airport. Her designer heels clicked nervously against the cabin floor, and her silence worried Alexander more than her earlier protests had. Emma looked up with those impossibly wise blue eyes, her small hand reaching out to touch a crystal glass with wonder. "Mr. Thornfield, in Mama's dreams, the bad men don't give up easy. They have lots of money and power too. Maybe even more than you." "No, maybe," Alexander replied, his voice carrying a new determination he'd never felt before, "but they don't have something I have." "What's that?" Emma asked innocently, her head tilted with genuine curiosity. "A reason to fight that's bigger than money or power." Alexander's phone buzzed insistently with urgent messages, his security team demanding explanations, his lawyers threatening resignations, his board of directors calling emergency meetings about his erratic behavior and association with unknown individuals of questionable background. But one message made his blood run cold. It was from Vance, and the clinical precision of the language made it more terrifying than any direct threat. "Mr. Thornfield, You're making a serious tactical error. The minor subject possesses abilities that represent a paradigm shift in medical science. We have obtained preliminary legal authority to retrieve her for protective custody and scientific evaluation. Multiple government agencies are now involved. This is your final opportunity to cooperate voluntarily before more aggressive extraction protocols are implemented. Emma suddenly grabbed Alexander's arm, her small face going pale with fear that seemed far beyond her years. He's not lying, Mr. Thornfield. I can feel it coming like a storm. There are people waiting for us wherever we're going. Lots of people with guns and badges and papers that say they can take me away. Mary pulled her daughter close, her own fear evident in the way her hands shook. Emma's always been sensitive to things like that. Even as a baby, she could sense when something bad was about to happen. The night before Michael deployed for the last time, she wouldn't stop crying. She knew he wasn't coming home. Alexander's strategic mind, honed by decades of corporate warfare, began working furiously. His estate in the Hamptons would be the obvious destination, too obvious, and certainly already under surveillance. His penthouse in Manhattan was equally predictable and probably already compromised. His various safe houses and corporate retreats would all be in government databases by now. But there was one place they might not expect, one property so old and abandoned that it barely existed in modern records. "Change of plans," Alexander told his pilot over the secure intercom. "We're going to Montana, the old Thornfield ranch." "Montana?" Catherine finally spoke, her voice sharp with confusion and growing panic. "Alexander, what in God's name is in Montana? We haven't been there since your grandfather died 20 years ago." "Exactly," Alexander replied grimly. "My grandfather's old ranch has been abandoned for decades, completely off the grid. No electronic surveillance, no paper trail connecting it to my current corporate assets, no digital footprint at all. If there's anywhere we can disappear completely." He looked at Emma and Mary, seeing the hope beginning to kindle in their frightened faces. "It's also sitting on land that used to belong to Native American healers, according to the old property records. If there's anywhere the golden medicine might be stronger." Emma's eyes widened with sudden excitement, her fear transforming into anticipation. Sacred ground! Yes! Grandmama always said the medicine works best on sacred ground where other healers walked before. Dull. But as they banked sharply toward the western mountains, none of them noticed the sleek black helicopter that had been following them since takeoff, staying just outside civilian radar range, equipped with military-grade tracking technology that could follow their heat signature from miles away. 8. The abandoned ranch spread out below them, like a scene from an old Western movie. Weathered wooden buildings with sagging roofs, overgrown fields where wildflowers had reclaimed cultivated land, and endless mountains stretching toward horizons that seemed to touch the sky itself. As their jet touched down on what had once been a private airstrip, Alexander felt a strange sense of homecoming he hadn't experienced in decades. "My grandfather built this place in the 1940s, after he came back from the war," he explained as they walked toward the main house, their feet crunching on gravel paths that hadn't seen maintenance in 20 years. He always said there was something special about this land, something that made him feel connected to something larger than himself. "I used to think it was just old man nonsense." Emma ran ahead, despite her mother's worried calls, her small hands trailing along the weathered wooden fence posts with obvious delight. "I can feel it too. The ground is humming with good energy, like there's music playing just too quiet to hear. Grandmama would absolutely love this place." Mary smiled for the first time since the airplane incident, her tired face lighting up as she watched her daughter's joy. "Emma's right. I haven't felt this peaceful since before Michael deployed for Afghanistan. There's something here that makes my heart feel lighter." But their moment of tranquility was shattered when Catherine's phone rang with a sharp, insistent tone. She answered automatically before Alexander could stop her, old habits of social connectivity overriding their desperate need for secrecy. "Hello? Yes, this is Catherine Thornfield. What? No, I don't know anything about—" "Wait, how did you get this number? This is a private line." Alexander lunged for the phone, but it was already too late. Vance's voice crackled through the speaker with smug triumph, like a corporate predator who had just cornered his prey. "Mrs. Thornfield, thank you for confirming your location so efficiently. We have satellite tracking systems that can pinpoint any electronic device the moment it connects to cellular networks, you know. Very convenient technology." "You bastard!" Alexander snarled into the phone, his usual corporate politeness completely abandoned. Now, Mr. Thornfield. Profanity won't improve anyone's situation here." Vance's voice remained maddeningly calm. "We have multiple extraction teams mobilizing as we speak. You have approximately 90 minutes before we arrive in force. I suggest you spend that time convincing the Johnson family to cooperate voluntarily. Things will proceed much more smoothly for everyone involved if they surrender peacefully." The line went dead, leaving them standing in silence that felt heavy with impending doom. Alexander stared at his wife in a mixture of disbelief and fury. "Catherine, what have you done? Do you realize you may have just signed Emma's death warrant?" "I was trying to call my sister in New York," she protested desperately, tears beginning to stream down her carefully made-up face. "I didn't know they were monitoring every phone call. I didn't know any of this would happen." "You've doomed us all," Mary whispered, pulling Emma protectively against her side, her face going ashen with the realization of what was coming. But Emma was no longer afraid. Instead, she was looking around the ranch with growing excitement, her bright blue eyes taking in details that the adults had missed. "No, Mama, this isn't doom. This is perfect. Don't you see? They led us exactly where we needed to be." "Emma, what are you talking about?" Alexander asked, crouching down to her eye level, desperate for any hope she might offer. Emma pointed toward a small hill behind the ranch house, where the remains of old stone foundations were barely visible through decades of overgrown grass and wildflowers. "Those aren't just old buildings, Mr. Thornfield. Those are ceremony grounds, sacred places where healers used to gather to do the most important work." Mary's eyes widened with sudden understanding, her grandmother's teachings flooding back to her. The golden medicine. It didn't just choose you randomly on that airplane, Emma. It brought us here for a reason. Emma nodded solemnly, her child's face carrying wisdom that seemed to span generations. "Grandmama always said that when the medicine is threatened by people who want to use it for bad things, it calls its defenders. This land has been waiting for us." Alexander looked around the seemingly empty ranch with new eyes, feeling something he couldn't quite name stirring in the mountain air around them. Defenders. "Emma, what exactly are you saying?" Emma smiled with mysterious confidence that made her seem far older than her 6 years. "You'll see, Mr. Thornfield, but first we need to prepare. The bad men think they're coming to capture one little girl with some magic medicine. They have no idea what they're really walking into." And as if responding to her words, the wind picked up suddenly, rustling through the tall grass with an almost musical sound that seemed to carry voices from long ago. And in the distance, Alexander could swear he heard the faint, rhythmic beating of ceremonial drums. 90 minutes later, a convoy of black SUVs and military helicopters surrounded the ranch like something from a war movie, their occupants armed with enough firepower to level a small building. Vance emerged from the lead vehicle with a team that looked more like a military operation than a corporate acquisition. Federal agents with government badges, private security contractors carrying assault weapons, and men in expensive suits whose cold eyes suggested they answered to agencies that didn't officially exist. "Mr. Thornfield," Vance called through a high-powered megaphone, his voice echoing across the valley with mechanical authority. This is your final opportunity to resolve this situation peacefully and legally. Send out the Johnson family immediately, and we can discuss reasonable financial compensation for their full cooperation with our research protocols. Alexander stood on the front porch, holding baby William protectively in his arms, with Mary and Emma beside him like a family preparing to face the apocalypse together. Catherine had barricaded herself inside the house, claiming she wanted no part in whatever was about to happen, her sobs audible through the boarded windows. "The only thing I'm sending out," Alexander shouted back with more courage than he'd ever possessed in any boardroom, "is a message. Leave these people alone, or face the consequences." Vance's laugh echoed across the valley with cruel amusement. "Mr. Thornfield, I appreciate your theatrical bravado, but let's discuss reality. You're vastly outnumbered by professionally trained operatives. We have legal authority from multiple government agencies, superior firepower, unlimited financial resources, and complete political backing. What exactly do you think you and a poverty-stricken woman with her delusional child can possibly do against the full force of corporate and government power?" Emma stepped forward, her small voice somehow carrying clearly across the distance, despite the wind and the helicopter noise. "Mister, you came to take something that doesn't belong to you. But this land remembers everyone who ever tried to steal from healers before." "Emma," Mary whispered nervously, placing protective hands on her daughter's small shoulders. "What are you doing?" "What grandmama taught me, Mama. What her grandmama taught her, and what the land itself taught all of them." Emma's voice carried a certainty that seemed to vibrate through the ground beneath their feet. "Sometimes the medicine doesn't just heal. Sometimes it fights back to protect the innocent." Emma reached into her small pocket and pulled out the remaining golden vials. Alexander counted at least 6 more, each one glowing with that mysterious inner light. But instead of offering them as medicine or holding them protectively, she began deliberately pouring the precious liquid onto the ground around the porch. "Little girl," Vance called impatiently through his megaphone, "you're destroying valuable medical resources that could save millions of lives. Stop this primitive nonsense immediately and surrender peacefully." "It's not nonsense, and it's not destruction," Emma replied with calm dignity beyond her years. "It's ceremony. It's awakening." As the golden liquid seeped into the earth, something extraordinary began to happen. The grass around the porch started to glow with a soft, ethereal light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The glow spread outward in perfect concentric circles, moving faster and faster until it reached the old stone foundations on the hill, where it suddenly blazed with brilliant intensity. Suddenly, the mountain air filled with the deep, primal sound of ceremonial drums, not recorded music or electronic effects, but the actual rhythm of drums beaten by hands that existed somewhere between worlds. The heavily armed agents looked around nervously, their weapons lowered in confusion as they tried to identify the source of sounds that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Sir," one of the federal agents called to Vance with barely controlled fear, "are you seeing this? The ground is actually glowing, and those drum sounds. There's no electronic equipment that could produce those frequencies." But Vance was no longer paying attention to his increasingly nervous team. His eyes were fixed with growing terror on something rising behind them, something that made his corporate confidence crumble like paper in fire. Alexander turned to look and felt his breath catch in his chest. Rising from the glowing ground were translucent figures, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Native American warriors in traditional dress, pioneer settlers carrying tools and weapons, cavalry soldiers from the last century, ranchers and farmers and ordinary people from every era. All of them shared one unmistakable characteristic. They were moving with unified purpose toward Vance's forces, their ghostly faces set with protective determination. 10. They're the spirits of everyone who ever protected healers on this land, Emma explained matter-of-factly, her young voice carrying the weight of generations of wisdom. Grandmama said they would come if the medicine was ever in real danger from people who wanted to use healing power for harm. One of Vance's agents dropped his weapon and ran toward the vehicles without looking back. Then another followed, and another. Within minutes, half his force was retreating in barely controlled panic, unwilling to face whatever supernatural guardians had been awakened by Emma's ceremony. But Vance himself stood firm, his corporate greed apparently stronger than his primal fear of the unknown. He pulled out a high-tech device that looked like a cross between a military scanner and a scientific analyzer. "Holographic projectors," he announced with forced confidence, though his voice carried a tremor he couldn't quite suppress. "Very impressive psychological warfare technology, but hardly supernatural. My team includes specialists in advanced illusion systems and crowd control manipulation." But his scientific skepticism wavered visibly as the device's screen showed no electronic signatures, no projection sources, no technological explanations. Nothing that could account for the glowing ground, the approaching spirits, or the drum sounds that seemed to resonate from the very bones of the earth itself. "Sir," his remaining agent called with barely contained panic, "the electromagnetic readings don't make any sense. Whatever this phenomenon is, it's not based on any known technology. I'm reading energy signatures that shouldn't be possible." Emma walked calmly down the porch steps, her small hand trailing golden light wherever she touched the luminous grass. Each footstep left a glowing print that pulsed with living warmth. "Mr. Vance, you want to know the real truth about the golden medicine. I want to own it, control it, and profit from it," Vance replied with brutal honesty, his corporate mask slipping to reveal the naked greed beneath. "I want to patent every molecule, mass-produce it in pharmaceutical factories, and make billions of dollars from human suffering." "That's exactly why you'll never understand it," Emma said with sadness that seemed impossibly mature for someone so young. "The medicine isn't a thing you can own or control. It's love made visible, hope given form, healing shared freely." She gestured toward baby William, who was cooing happily in Alexander's arms with perfect health and obvious contentment. "Your baby didn't get healed because of magic herbs or secret chemical formulas. He got healed because everyone in that airplane, even the people who were scared, even the ones who didn't understand, wanted him to live. The medicine just focused all that love and hope into something powerful enough to save him." Mary stepped forward, tears streaming down her weathered face as she spoke with quiet authority. Emma's grandmother spent her entire life teaching sick children that they were loved unconditionally, that they mattered deeply, that someone cared enough to fight for their healing. The golden liquid was just honey and spring water, but it worked because it carried the love of generations of healers who chose hope over despair. Alexander stared at Emma in growing amazement, puzzle pieces falling into place in his mind. "You mean it was never about the medicine itself? It was never about the chemical composition or the magical properties? The medicine was just a way to help people believe that healing was possible." Emma nodded with gentle wisdom. "But the real healing came from love, your desperate love for baby William, my family's love for helping sick babies, Grandmama's love for everyone who needed hope, even the love of strangers who wanted good things to happen." Vance laughed harshly, though the sound carried an edge of hysteria. "Sentimental nonsense. Love doesn't cure genetic disorders. Hope doesn't restructure DNA. You can't patent emotions or bottle feelings." "Can't you?" Dr. Chen's familiar voice came from behind them. Alexander spun around in surprise to see the emergency physician from the airplane walking up the ranch road, carrying a medical bag and looking both exhausted and exhilarated. "Dr. Chen, how did you find us? What are you doing here?" "I've been researching what happened on that plane for months, Doctor," Chen said, pulling out a thick folder of medical documents and test results. "Mr. Thornfield, I've run every conceivable test on the blood samples from your son. The results are not just unprecedented, they're revolutionary." She opened the folder, revealing complex charts, DNA analyses and brain scans that made Alexander's head spin. William's genetic structure has been completely optimized, not just healed from his original condition, evolved beyond normal human parameters. His DNA now shows natural resistance to dozens of hereditary diseases. His immune system is functioning at levels I've never documented in medical literature. And most remarkably, his neurological development suggests cognitive capabilities that could reshape our understanding of human potential. Alexander felt the world shifting beneath his feet like an earthquake of understanding. "What exactly are you saying, Dr. Chen?" "I'm saying that whatever happened on that airplane created something new in human evolution. Your son isn't just healthy, he's been enhanced in ways that could benefit all of humanity if we understood the mechanism." 11. Vance's eyes lit up with renewed greed, his fear temporarily forgotten in the face of unprecedented profit potential. "There. You see, this is exactly why we need to study the girl extensively. If she can create enhanced humans at will, if we can replicate and control this process, we're talking about the next stage of human evolution. Genetic enhancement, superhuman capabilities, the military applications alone would be worth trillions." "You still don't understand anything," Emma interrupted with profound sadness, as if mourning for his willful blindness. "It wasn't me who enhanced baby William. It was his daddy's desperate love, mixed with everyone's hope, focused through ceremony and faith, and the willingness to believe in miracles. I was just the messenger, just the bridge between the medicine and the people who needed healing." She looked directly at Alexander with eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. "Mr. Thornfield, baby William is going to grow up to be a healer too. Not because of magic chemicals in his bloodstream, but because he'll always remember what it felt like to be saved by pure love. And he'll spend his entire life making sure other sick babies feel that same unconditional love." Alexander looked down at his son with completely new understanding, seeing not just a healthy infant, but a future guardian of hope. "Emma, are you saying William's special purpose, his gift, is to heal others the same way you healed him?" "Not just heal," Emma smiled with mysterious knowledge, "but to teach people how to heal each other. That's what the golden medicine really does. It shows people that miracles happen when we choose love over fear, hope over despair, giving over taking, community over isolation." But Vance wasn't finished with his corporate ambitions. "Touching philosophy," he sneered, raising his backup weapon toward Emma with deadly intent. "But I have investors to answer to, profit margins to maintain, and scientific breakthroughs to monetize. Ghost stories and sentiment won't stop me from taking what I came for." He aimed directly at the little girl who had started it all, but before he could pull the trigger, something extraordinary happened. Baby William, still cradled peacefully in Alexander's arms, began to glow with the same golden light as the ground beneath their feet. The radiance grew brighter and brighter until everyone had to shield their eyes from the intensity. When the light finally dimmed to a manageable level, Vance's weapon had simply vanished. Not destroyed or damaged, but transformed into golden dust that scattered on the mountain wind like blessing powder. "Impossible," Vance whispered, backing away in terror. "That defies every law of physics, every principle of matter and energy." Emma looked up at Alexander with tears of pride streaming down her small face. "See, baby William already knows how to protect people who need protection. The love that healed him made him a guardian of other healers." Dr. Chen was frantically taking notes, her scientific instruments registering readings that challenged everything she thought she knew. "The energy output is beyond measurement. Alexander, your son is somehow generating a bioelectric field that can alter molecular structures at the atomic level. This isn't just medical healing, this is evolution guided by conscious intention. But Mary stepped forward, her voice filled with quiet authority that commanded everyone's attention. Doctor, you're still trying to explain miracles with scientific theories. Some things are bigger than laboratories and test results, bigger than understanding and control. She looked around at the glowing ground, the translucent guardian spirits still standing protectively around them like an army of love, and her daughter, who had started all of this with nothing but compassion and faith. My Emma has spent her whole short life watching people suffer and wanting desperately to help. She learned from her great-grandmother that healing isn't something you do to people, it's something you do with them. The golden medicine only worked because everyone involved chose to believe in love instead of fear, hope instead of despair. Alexander felt tears streaming down his face as understanding finally dawned completely. It was never about the medicine at all, was it? It was about giving people permission to hope, creating space for miracles to happen. Emma nodded with solemn wisdom. Grandmama always said that everyone has golden medicine inside them. Most people just forget how to access it, how to share it, how to let it work through them to help others. Vance made one last desperate attempt, pulling out yet another weapon from his extensive arsenal. But as he raised it with trembling hands, something completely unexpected happened. Catherine emerged from the house, moving with determined grace to stand protectively in front of Emma and Mary. "No," Catherine said firmly, her voice carrying strength Alexander had never heard before. "I won't let you hurt them, not after everything they've given us." Alexander stared at his wife in amazement. "Catherine!" "I've been listening to everything from inside," Catherine said, her voice trembling but absolutely determined. "I've spent so many years worried about money and social status and what other people thought of us. I almost lost the chance to witness a real miracle because I was too afraid to believe in something bigger than profit margins and material success." She looked at Emma with newfound respect and understanding. "This little girl saved our son's life, gave us back our family, showed us what love really looks like. And all I could think about was how to capitalize on it, how to turn it into another business opportunity. I'm deeply ashamed of the person I've been." Emma walked over and took Catherine's trembling hand in her small, warm one. "Mrs. Thornfield, shame is just fear wearing a disguise, and fear is just love that forgot how to trust. You don't have to carry any of that heavy stuff anymore." As Emma's small hand touched Catherine's, something remarkable happened that made everyone present catch their breath in wonder. The bitter lines around Catherine's eyes softened visibly, the tension in her shoulders melted away, and for the first time in years, her face radiated genuine peace and contentment. "I can feel it," Catherine whispered in amazement, her voice filled with childlike wonder. "I can actually feel the love you've been talking about. It's like warm sunlight filling every empty space inside my chest, like coming home after being lost for years." 1 year later, Alexander stood on the wraparound porch of the fully restored ranch house, watching Emma play with 2-year-old William in the afternoon sunlight that seemed to make everything glow with gentle radiance. The abandoned property had been transformed into something that defied easy categorization. Part healing center, part spiritual retreat, part research facility, part community gathering place where families came from around the world seeking something far more powerful than conventional medicine. "The latest statistics continue to astound everyone," Dr. Chen said, approaching with her monthly report and wearing the satisfied expression of a scientist whose worldview had been beautifully shattered. "We're documenting healing rates that challenge everything we thought we knew about medicine, but not because of any pharmaceutical interventions or technological breakthroughs." "What's really causing the healing then?" Alexander asked, though he already knew the answer in his bones. Community, unconditional love, hope shared freely. The absolute certainty that everyone who comes here is valued, supported, and worthy of healing. Dr. Chen gestured toward the main building where families were sharing meals together. Children were playing regardless of their medical conditions, and parents were supporting each other through journeys that would have been impossible to face alone. Emma was right all along. The golden medicine was never about the liquid in those vials. It was about creating an environment where healing becomes inevitable because people truly believe they deserve to be whole. Mary approached carrying a thick envelope, her face glowing with the peace that came from meaningful work. "Alexander, this came for you today by special courier. It's from Jonathan Vance." Alexander opened the expensive envelope with curiosity rather than fear. Inside were several sheets of letterhead from what appeared to be a completely different company, written in handwriting that seemed much steadier and more genuine than he remembered. "Mr. Thornfield, I've spent the past year trying to forget what happened at that ranch, trying to return to my old life of acquisition and profit. But I can't stop thinking about what Emma said, about everyone having golden medicine inside them, about healing being something we do together rather than something we do to each other. I've completely restructured my company, fired my entire extraction team, and liquidated all pharmaceutical holdings that involved exploitation or coercion. I want to learn how to share healing instead of hoarding profit. Would you consider accepting my help at your center? I have resources and connections that could help protect other children like Emma from people like I used to be. Jonathan Vance, Director of Healing Partnerships." Emma looked up from where she was helping William practice walking toward a new family that had just arrived. A couple carrying their sick daughter with the same desperate hope Alexander remembered carrying a year ago. "He's finally ready now," she said with simple certainty. His heart remembered how to choose love over fear. Alexander folded the letter thoughtfully. "Should we give him that chance?" "Grandmama always said that healing works both ways," Emma replied with wisdom that still amazed him. "When you help someone else get better, you get better too. That's how the golden medicine keeps growing." Catherine, who had spent the past year learning to be a mother and partner instead of just a socialite, joined their conversation with baby Grace, their daughter, who had been born 6 months ago with perfect health and an unusually calm, loving disposition. "Alexander, I keep thinking about what Emma said on that airplane. About William having a special purpose in this world." They all turned to watch the little boy, who was now walking confidently toward the new family. Without any prompting or instruction, William walked directly to their sick daughter and reached out to touch her hand with innocent intention. As their small fingers connected, the child's fever broke instantly, her labored breathing eased, and she smiled with genuine joy for the first time in months. "There it is," Emma said with deep satisfaction, clapping her hands together. "Baby William is becoming who he was always meant to be." Alexander knelt down to Emma's level, still moved by the casual miracle they had just witnessed. "What about you, Emma Mae Johnson? What's your special purpose as you grow up?" Emma considered the question with the seriousness she brought to all important matters, then smiled with the radiant wisdom of someone who had found her calling. "I think my job is to help people remember that miracles aren't something that happen to us. They're something that happen through us, when we choose to love more than we fear, to hope more than we doubt, to give more than we take." She looked around at the bustling healing center, families from every background sharing meals and stories, children playing together regardless of their medical conditions or family wealth, adults learning to support each other through challenges that would have seemed impossible to face alone, medical professionals working alongside spiritual healers and traditional medicine practitioners in unprecedented collaboration. Grandmama used to say that the golden medicine was just the beginning, just the first drop in an ocean of healing that was waiting to happen. She said the real magic happens when people discover they don't need external magic at all. They just need each other and the courage to believe in love. As the sun set behind the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold that reminded everyone of that first miraculous moment on the airplane, Alexander realized that Emma had given him something infinitely more valuable than his son's physical health. She had given him a completely new understanding of what it meant to be truly wealthy, not in money or power or social status, but in love, community, purpose, and the endless possibility for healing that exists when people choose hope over fear, connection over isolation, giving over taking. Baby William took another confident step toward his destiny as a healer. Emma continued, teaching anyone who would listen about the golden medicine that lives inside every human heart. And in the distance, a convoy of vehicles approached the ranch, carrying not only Jonathan Vance, ready to learn what it really meant to be rich, but dozens of other former corporate predators, government officials, and pharmaceutical executives who had been touched by stories of the healing center and wanted to transform their own lives from exploitation to service. The golden medicine had worked its greatest miracle of all, transforming a story about one desperate father and his dying baby into a legacy of healing that was spreading across the world, one act of love at a time, one family at a time, one choice to believe in miracles at a time. And in the growing twilight, as families gathered for evening meals and children's laughter echoed across the sacred land, everyone present understood that they were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in human history, a new way of healing that would change everything forever. The end.